You've tuned into the new season of the Engineering Success Podcast. This season, we're diving deeper into engineering management. Today, we're discussing engineering resources and team management with Shira Haddad, the Senior Director of Engineering at NERSA. So without further ado, we move to our host, Himanshu.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Engineering Success Podcast. I want to start with what has been your origin story. Could you tell us a little bit about you, the work that you do?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm currently located in the US. I've been here for 14 years, but I started my career in Israel. I studied mathematics and I loved it, but then I needed a job. So I found a QA job and I kind of fell in love with the whole software cycle and understanding what's happening there. I started managing a team, but then I moved to the US and got back into QA. And from there, I kind of traveled between QA and product management. And then I started managing a QA team. I was really lucky to start managing the team at a very crucial point of the company where they started moving to the cloud. So I started leading a lot of processes around it. So it means moving to Kanban from waterfall, basically adopting agile practices. It means moving to AWS and building the architecture behind it. It means releases that are daily rather than kind of big monthly one. So a lot of processes that I was leading, and then my switch to leading the whole engineering department was pretty natural because I was kind of doing it anyway with all of those processes. From there, I moved into kind of different industry, which is more health tech. That was shipping and maritime and shipping, kind of similar to my background. But then I moved into health tech. I was leading engineering in all of these companies, either as a director, as a VP of engineering, and now I'm the senior director of engineering at NERSA. And that's a company that does matching between facilities and clinicians. And I'm really, really happy here. I'm going to be celebrating a year in September.
So quite a journey, right? From Israel to US, starting as a QA, then getting into product, leading engineering team. I do want to know how, in terms of experience, working in Israel versus working in US, how different is it?
I'm very direct, and I think that is something I'm reading from Israel. And in the US, it's either welcome or it's very not welcome. So I had different types of relationships around that. And I needed to kind of learn how to be a bit more diplomatic and understand that even though what I'm saying is correct, doesn't mean I need to say it out loud and in people's faces. So I needed to kind of adjust my communication style. The work-life balance was horrible, really, really bad. It was better in the US, but I still think there's room for improvement. I learned to kind of put better boundaries for myself.
But did that ever got you in any sort of trouble? Being so direct and then did that land you in any?
Yes, it did get me into trouble, but I think there's also a value in that. And I think when people get to know me, they do know that I care. I'm not trying to be awful or anything like that. I actually try to get work done, and that's my goal. So I remember one of my previous bosses told me, Shira, you're very direct, but you always do it with care. And I really appreciated that because that's how I try to come across. So I was glad he was that.
Let's talk about your engineering team. How many people are there? How is the team structured? Is it remote? Is it distributed? And how often do you guys meet?
Sure. Our tech organization is around 80 people, a bit more than that. We have a new VP of engineering. She's really awesome. She's local in Utah. We are 3 engineering directors and 1 senior manager who kind of overseeing most of the organization. Each of us have a pillar. I own the facilities pillar. There's a match between clinicians and facilities, so I own the facilities side, like the businesses that post shit for the clinicians. My organization is around 22 people. I'm overseeing 3 different teams, 3 managers and 1 principal engineer. All very excellent people. We're fully distributed in the tech organization. We have quite a few people in the Utah office, but our tech organization is very distributed across Poland and Brazil and a few other countries that are in the mix. I'm in the East Coast, so that's a really sweet spot for me in terms of time zone.
So I see you're dealing with a relatively smaller team size. And one of the reasons why we started this podcast, especially in this season, was to talk about how do we really take care of the allocation when it comes to the team and projects, which is more so important now because teams are becoming smaller, but there's more workload. And I think eventually we'll be seeing more and more good work coming out of smaller teams. What are the challenges do you face with?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the popular convention is you could always use more people, right? If only I had more people, I would be able to do more. But I kind of challenge that notion, and I do think that there are a lot of efficiencies and optimizations you can introduce with your current team size. I think the challenge is getting that to be, bought in by the whole team members and try to get them to understand that within your working hours, let's make sure that you're working on the most important thing rather than you feeling that we don't have enough people. So you need to give your weekends and nights and be more stressed. So there are a lot of aspects to it because I think even within the working hours, the pressure levels can be very high for folks and they will be like, I just need some help. So how do we make sure that they know that what they're working on is the priority, is what's important? We don't have any interruptions, we don't have any bottlenecks. How do we make sure that we optimize for the time that they have there? I think that's the challenge, and it definitely takes time. But me kind of modeling that behavior and telling them, well, if we're doing this, it means that we're not doing this other thing, and be honest about it. Make sure that I'm modeling that kind of behavior. I'm only doing what I'm asked to be doing and what I committed to be doing, and that's it.
So in this, how do you really prioritize? Because in smaller teams, based on my experience, I've seen that sometimes you're working on pushing new features, but then on the other side, you've got a lot of backlog coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times, because limited amount of time, if you're doing X, Y is not getting done. So how do you decide, essentially, what is your recipe for prioritizing something?
For sure. So first, me as a leader and the other leaders in the organization, we're burdened with multiple cry one issues, right? Like we have to accept the fact that everything is important. But I never want my engineers to feel that way, right? I want them to know that they only have single cry one, single cry two, and not everything at the same time. This way they're more focused, the quality is higher, etc. And then we need to decide what is that one, and then explicitly say, that means this will come later. That means we will not be doing this other thing. So in terms of prioritization, obviously we have our partners, the products team, who have a roadmap. They're talking about the impact of the different features. So that will always be the first parameter, like what is the impact? And then again, you have to balance it out with what is the cost. So there's almost like a balancing game here where they will say this is an initiative with very high impact. We will say this is how much it will take us, and then we kind of go back and forth with specification. So you will have a really good understanding of the balanced out kind of, cost for this, and will this make sense to prioritize or not? We do the same with technical initiatives and with bugs as well. It does mean sometimes working on translating we need to clean this statement to this will make deployments faster, or this will solve a lot of the maintenance issues and incidents that are happening every day, right? So that kind of translation is my job, and the other engineering leader's job to kind of make sure that we know how to prioritize it with everything else. So mostly, as the engineering leader with the product leader, we're the ones prioritizing the work that's coming in, making sure that the impact and cost are clear. And then we kind of make sure that the team knows this is the highest priority. After that,
So, with so a lot of onus is on the engineering leaders to really figure out what should be a next step of action. In all of this, how are these decisions taken? Are there any sort of tools or dashboards that you guys refer to? How do you know, like, this is something that we have to work on, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so in my experience, this has been different from one company to another. A few common tools that I would mention. One for the product features, I think there's something called RIGHT, which is an acronym. I don't remember exactly what goes into it, but you want to talk about the efforts, you want to talk about the impact, you want to have an understanding of what's happening there. And then from a technical standpoint, you want to talk about scale, you want to talk about reliability, about maintenance, about code readiness, about the cost of migration, if you have to do something like that, any new flows that are introduced to users, rollout, etc. And then you need to kind of compare that to what exactly you need to do in terms of the business roadmap and how do you align yourself to the business. So I think those are kind of common tools. What I did in quite a few of the companies I worked in, I just created a spreadsheet. We don't even have to use it. And sometimes companies will have their own kind of specific parameter that will be added, right? So it does include scale and deployments and migration and all of those kind of parameters that help us understand why do we actually need to go through this tech initiative. So having all of that and then also putting into a kind of confidence level, there will always be unknown, but sometimes known unknown. So we need to talk about that, right? And kind of make sure that we're factoring that in. So I would say I don't have a persistent tool that I use every time, but I do use those kind of frameworks and parameters in every time that we get into it.
Shira, you spoke about the business alignment with engineering. In the progression of an engineer from an individual contributor to, I mean, as you move up the ladder, at what point does business start coming into it? Like, when did you feel that, okay, now I really have to look at it from a business POV? It's not just
Yeah.
about being an excellent engineer now.
Yeah, that's a great question. In reality, I think sometimes it will only come in when you're a director. In ideal, I want it to go into the engineer level, to the individual contributor. I think that if they don't know the impact of what they're doing, they will be spending their time in low value activities. They will not have an understanding of what they should be focused on. In reality, I do see some people who don't even know how their product is being used, or they will say, oh, I'm only doing front end, I'm only doing back end, I don't care. I'm working a lot with their managers and kind of with them and kind of trying to say, okay, this is how people are using it. This is what they're seeing. How can we make sure that whatever we're doing will build up to this point of time where you have people using your software? So I think that's really important. So the business should always be part of what you're thinking about. For example, if we have a few metrics, like, at NERSA, we have booking, etc., and we know how many shifts are being booked. I want everyone to know about it, right? I want everyone to think, okay, how what I'm doing is building up to that metric. Sometimes it won't, or maybe it will do that implicitly because what you're doing is keeping the lights on in terms of incidents or maintenance or monitoring and logging and making sure that we are secure. So doing all of that will still build up to that metric. You know what the path is. So having those conversations, I think, are very useful. And we always have them. I think that's always important.
You said it's at the director level when you realize that now business is coming more into the picture. But you also say that you would want engineers to be more aware of it in the early stages. So what are some practices or what are some suggestions that somebody could implement in their workspace and their team so that the engineering teams are aligned and they become business aware?
Yeah, I think there's no one right answer. I think we all have to practice better in doing this. So first, I would look at the product manager, right? We should not be order takers. We should be partners with the product manager and kind of talking through what are we trying to solve? Why are we trying to solve it? And then only discuss the how. And sometimes people will start with the how. We just need to add a new field to this form, and that's it. And no one is asking, why do we need it? What does it solve? How are we going to know that we're being successful? So I think getting into the culture, understanding that these questions are not slowing us down. They're actually focusing us and getting us to do better work eventually and to deliver to the business impact. So getting those conversations in is really important. So I think, again, modeling it, practicing it, making sure that the product manager understands that they're our partner, that we are partners to the engineering manager. It is healthy to push back. It is healthy to ask why and understand why we're doing what we're doing, suggest alternative designs, etc. And then I would look after the product manager, I would look at the engineering manager, kind of make sure, are you doing this? Are you kind of making sure that the team knows this is how we do work? We ask questions so we will be able to implement and do the work better later.
Essentially, engineers, when it comes to their formal education, you're not really trained into people skills. It's something that you build it up over the time. So in your journey, when you were climbing up the ladder, what is that one thing you wish you knew?
Yeah. Oh man, you're really right. I mean, I think a lot of the times we're very focused on the innovation and the technical skills, and I think that's wonderful and that's super intriguing and interesting. And it's almost easy to stay in that realm and not have an understanding of what else is happening in the business, right? But if you want a leadership position and if you want to kind of have more impact, you eventually need to think about the other teams and the other departments. I think for me, and I'm ashamed to say that, but I was kind of dismissing marketing and sales. I was like, those guys, like, I don't want to even hear about them. I don't care what they want or what they think. And today I have huge respect to those folks, right? What they're doing is something I don't know how to do. I have no idea how to approach it. I understand that I was talking out of ignorance of their skills and what they need to do. And I think for me to actually produce better results, I need to understand why they're doing what they're doing and how I can assist them in doing what they need to actually achieve. And if I'm being this kind of a partner, they will be the same kind of partner to me. And I've seen a lot of success in that, in kind of partnering with those kind of teams who are very unnatural partners to engineering, but actually talking through the things that I think there's a lot of touch points that make sense. And sometimes it's not just a product, it's website, it's usage, it's kind of tracking the funnel, talking about, what is the full image of what we're building and how it looks like. What does make sense for sales when they go into a new potential customer? So I think that's a thing that I would love to know earlier in my process and understanding, no, actually, they're not just those people. They actually true partners, and collaborating with them will bring a lot of success.
Maybe coming back to our earlier point where I was talking about your team, one aspect of a startup when cooperating with a lean team is that, of course, you've got your deadlines, you need to deliver things. But then there are also sometimes there are ad hoc requests coming in, and
Yeah.
then also have your maybe you already know you got some sort of plan for your quarter, but then you realize something has gone wrong, and then you need to really come up with a new plan. So how do you deal in this whole serendipity of it, or what has been your experience in situations like?
Yeah, that happens all the time, as you said. I think when it happens, I want to be able to ask the same questions that we talked about earlier. Like some very quick kind of postmortem, like, why did this happen? Why didn't we know about it before? Can we do better in planning? This is a muscle. And as a company, working better with each other will be better. But the fact is that this is happening all the time. And then when it happens, we want to kind of do this quick evaluation and prioritization and say, okay, so what I'm working on right now will be delayed because now I'm taking on this other thing. This happened to us a few months ago where we were kind of in a really tight deadline to deliver on the end of the quarter work that we committed to one of my teams. And then all of a sudden, we need this feature that we talked about very high level until now, but all of a sudden we need it yesterday. We just really need it yesterday. So I think to me, the biggest part is talking to the engineer, explaining what happened, right? Because to them, this happens way too often and they're being distracted way too often. And usually they don't know why way too often. So I think my job here is to actually bridge that and kind of say, this is the reason why this happened. This is what I learned so far. These are the unknowns. I don't know why this happened or this happened. They were supposed to tell us this, but they didn't. So this is how we found ourselves here. Kind of being transparent and honest about what happened. And then being very clear with the engineer. The fact that this new thing came in and now we need to do this does not mean that you still need to deliver this other thing that you were supposed to deliver as of this morning. This will be delayed. And after you're done with this new thing that we just dropped on your table, let's have a conversation and evaluate a new date for this other thing that got pushed. I don't think we need to get the engineers stressed out about delivering two things at the same date, etc. I know some people operate this way. This is not my way. I think you will have very bad quality for both of those deliverables. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So sometimes you will have to negotiate scope with the product partner or this person that thing on your table. Sometimes you will have to talk with the engineer and ask, okay, what is the minimum viable thing that we can get out now to make this stakeholder happy and keep moving with our original plan? So having all of these questions out of the way and obviously encouraging the engineer to come up with their own solution, I think that will be really helpful. That's what we did here. This was actually a full-fledged feature that we've decided to scope down to a feature flag that will have a value rather than a full UI around it, because we really wanted to make sure that the stakeholder is happy, but also we didn't want to deviate too much from our original plan.
A lot of it is happening, but then it's your ability as a engineering lead which is helping you navigate all of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And kind of, protect the team, but also make sure that you're being very transparent about everything else that's going on, right? I've seen too many times in the past leaders that will treat their teams as kids, right? Like, you don't need to know about what's going on out there. And then eventually it will trickle down to the team and they will feel the pressure. So I can tell them, hey, this is going on. These are the things I'm asking you to help me with. Does this make sense, right? So kind of being transparent, but also defend them as much as possible from whatever else is going on.
This year, we did speak about your Israel experience and then how was it different being in the US. But what is it that one thing that you brought from your Israel experience and that helped you out here in US?
Yeah, I think Israel was earlier in my career, so there were a lot of learnings that I did there. A lot of things that I learned in Israel that I was able to implement here, I really enjoyed. I think first, relationships with different types of people in different types of company departments around you. So not being so kind of pigeonholed to just engineering, just kind of talking to your own people, but actually branch out. So I think that's one thing that I brought. The other is more technical, is just kind of, I did QA in Israel, then QA management, but I was heavily involved in a lot of product management discussions and also technical solutions and kind of technical architecture. So I learned a lot about code. For some reason, we did C#, so I picked up some C# skills there as well. So that was a lot of fun. And I think for me, it kind of opened me up to, even though I'm not, as a QA, I was not one of the engineers that was able to go into the code, suggest, changes, etc. And it gave me a lot of confidence to kind of bring that in to different companies here in the US. So that was a lot of fun.
Shira, any last word of advice for aspiring engineering leaders or maybe people who are already in this position, for how well or how can they approach their resources and teams and distribution and planning?
Sure. Yeah. I've seen a lot of engineering leaders saying, hey, we need more people. And I hear them. I mean, it is something that we all feel. I think if you change the presentation to, with this team, this is what I can do. If I had a bigger team, I will be able to deliver more things, and this is how it will look like. I think then the conversation is much more productive rather than I'm drowning. It's really hard for me to deliver all of the things that you want me, because eventually the work will be fixed, right? It will be a fixed size. So kind of presenting it more as an opportunity and what you can do if you add more people and what will be the impact, I think then you can actually get results. So that is something that I would advise people to think about. What can I do with my current team? What is the opportunity that we're missing if we're not adding people? I would say that adding people is costly to the productiveness of the team. So sometimes it will actually make more sense to look inward, saying, I'm not going to hire for a human. So I'm going to take a look at my team, make sure that they're happy, that they don't have any bottlenecks or frustrations, any kind of blocking people, etc. Seeing how I can optimize on this, solve it for them, and make sure that they have a smooth journey around lead time, etc., and kind of making sure that they can actually deliver. And only then ask myself, okay, do I really need more people, or was it just, because we were having so much frustration and stress that, that was blocking us from delivering?
I think a great word of advice. The fact that I think the language has to change. I think it also has a lot to do with your own internal clarity as a leader. That, okay, you might say that you need a team, but once you start looking at it from the perspective that you said, okay, this is what I'm able to do now, and this is how I can scale, that reflects more, I think, and it reflects more on your ability to really assess what's what.
It positions you as a better leader. Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Shira, for joining us. We'll have more conversations with you in the future.
This was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us. Stay tuned for more.